Yeah.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of the No Name Never football show and podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Bromley, and we are in unfamiliar territory. The Clarets suffering only their third loss this season at home to QPR. A very strange game that left us all kind of scratching our heads when we walked away. I'm joined this week by regular analyst George Poole, where we're going to be looking over the 5 talking points of this fixture. So, let's go. George, welcome. Let's dive straight in, please. Talking point number 1. How much have we missed Nathan Tella, Burnley? Collapsing again to another defeat yesterday. I say that without any irony. Obviously, we're not being ironic here. We haven't collapsed to anything. But the Clarets have struggled to get a win over recent times and suffered their third loss this championship season. Given how many chances we had at the beginning of that game, that we should have probably gone in 17-0 or something at half time, how much, my question to you is, have we missed Nathan Tella?
Yeah, absolutely. I think from the moment he came off against Reading, you thought that's a real shame. And I think every performance since those opening 20 minutes of Reading have shown how important he is to the team, not in terms of just how his goal scoring, but in terms of the movement, everything he offers to the side. We've looked a little bit lost in our attacking spark since then. And I wonder perhaps whether it's due in part due to success bringing about this. I've said that quite wrong there, but what I mean is that for the first few months of the season, Tella was more of a coming off the bench kind of player or starting on the wing. And then after a couple of months, company seemed to settle on this idea of using Tella almost as a second striker. And it worked to great success. He scored something like 17 or 18 goals this season in the league. He's been absolutely fantastic. And then all of a sudden, we're going back to a side that doesn't have Tella in, and he's playing with a more traditional sort of setup, how we had at the start of the year with a lone striker and then 2 out-and-out wingers on either side. And it almost looks like we're a little bit lost in terms of how to build up our football and get into positions, not just where it looks like we should be scoring and should be winning 15-0 at half-time, but where we're actually creating viable chances. Because even though I thought we were, brilliant in that first half against QPR yesterday, there wasn't massive chances where I thought, wow, that should have been scored. There was the odd,
Howard Bellis as one.
Yeah, there was possibly 1 or 2, but it wasn't an onslaught. So I think maybe Tella and the lack of Tella is just meaning we're not finding that clinical edge in and around the box.
That said, though, Jay did find his way back onto the pitch, which was nice to see. He was always going to have to try and find his way back around the pitch and around the team again. He's obviously quite rusty, but do we think he will provide us with that spark again that we need in front of goal?
Yeah, I felt bad for Jay yesterday in that he came on and they scored within like a few minutes, and it was just the worst possible timing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it really did, and their goal took the sting out of the game. We just looked completely disjointed, and that unfortunately coincided with the substitutions. So it really did look like, in hindsight, the wrong move to make. But that being said, it's just great to have Jay back, obviously, because he's been injured since November. And whilst I think just before he got injured, he had a run of games where he wasn't scoring. If you look back to that first half of the season, and Jay had scored 9 goals. And for all I've, lauded Ashley Barnes with brilliant praise, and he's played brilliant in the last few months, and we can say all about, well, the striker in this system isn't there to score goals. Barnes has only scored, 3 or 4 goals, and we've been tremendous. Jay was playing in a very similar role to Barnes and still managed to score 9 for himself. So he's clearly got that real ability to score goals at this level. So we've obviously missed him, and it's just good to see him back. But yeah, maybe the worst possible timing for his return yesterday, unfortunately.
Definitely. Okay, talking point number 2. Has there been, do we think, a drop-off in intensity since the Clarets secured promotion away at the Riverside? And, well, I guess since the Easter weekend, because it was quite an emphatic victory at home against Sheffield United as well. Has there been a drop-off of intensity, or is it more, which is what a lot of our listeners inputted on Twitter, more of maybe a lack of cohesion and with the squad rotating now and new players coming in?
I guess I'd sort of answer with an amalgamation of both, in that I think maybe with the changes comes then a lack of intensity. Not possibly, it might be a subconscious thing. The players are thinking, well, if we're playing a second string team, it doesn't instill that real determination that we have to win these games. We really do have to go out there and get 3 points, because if we're fielding a weakened side, it's almost like we don't respect those games as much. And for as much as obviously we'll bat away the ridiculous criticism that Huddersfield have been speculated about in the press with a
We're
weakened
not
side.
giving them airtime. We are not giving them
No,
airtime. It's ridiculous.
and as much as that is ridiculous, I think possibly there's a lack of intensity just because of the amount of changes. You've got, I mean, you can't have it both ways. You can't say, well, we should play a first team every week and then complain that we played a first team against QPR and lost. But I don't think it's as simple as that. You play a second string side in 2 games against weakened opposition. That second string side clearly wasn't cohesive enough, and we've seen that in the cup before where they're just not good enough when they're all thrown in at once. I
Yeah.
think it's then really hard for first teamers to be asked to come back in having lost all the momentum and be asked to go out there and put on a winning performance just like you have for the 19 games prior to Reading. I think that's really difficult, and I think it showed in the QPR performance yesterday. But it's just a really frustrating way to come towards the end of the season, really, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's one of those really where you've got to look at this with a sensible head on your shoulders, and you assess a team over the course of the season. And does it matter that we only went 22 games undefeated? Does it matter that we've got over 100 points? Does it matter that we've got the championship's greatest ever team record? No, it doesn't. The only thing that we will care about next season will be that Burnley got promoted at the first time of asking, and that we were probably champions. And it doesn't matter whether we did that with 7 games to go or 1 game to go. It doesn't matter if it goes to the end of the season. History books will tell us that we were champions, and we were champions for a reason. I think probably one of the things that's felt a little disappointing about yesterday is that seasons like this one, where you have an opportunity to create a legacy and one that's talked about for a long time, just never ever come along. And hopefully for us, they won't come along again for a while. And we had a taster of it recently in the season that the Clarets got into Europe, because that was so unexpected. And because of decisions out of our control, that didn't really materialize into anything that was any form of legacy either. If anything, it was kind of the start of the end of that chapter of that particular Burnley squad. So I get it. I get that some fans were frustrated that we've gone from being talked about as being one of the greatest championship sides ever, but just because we haven't got the points record, just because we're not going to go over 100, doesn't mean that we're not. Look back on this season with fondness and look back at exactly what we've achieved, because I think that's the most important thing. Moving on then, talking point number 3. A difficult one, because, again, we shouldn't be critical of anything this season because it's been an incredible season. So we're coming at this purely from an analytical perspective, not a criticism perspective. But there's been a noticeable drop in form of Anas Zaroury. Do we think he needs a break? Do we think he needs a change in shape? Do we think he needs something on the pitch that is going to help him out? Have we got too much pressure on his shoulders? What's the current state of play with him, George?
Yeah, it's really frustrating to watch, isn't it, when a player's performed so well in the first half of the season, and he came back after the World Cup, and in his first game he scored that winner, scored the goal like within 2 minutes, and you thought, wow, this is fantastic. We're gonna continue seeing him shine throughout the course of the season, and he's just not played well since the World Cup. Realistically, he's had flashes here and there, but he's not had consistently good games. Again, yesterday, I thought he was decent in the first half, and I thought the whole squad was pretty good in the first half. It was an enjoyable performance, and we really should have gone in, winning and looking comfortable. But then in the second half, his performance just dropped off again. The crossing wasn't great. His decision-making wasn't fantastic. And I'm wondering whether it's a similar case to where Cornet went off to a mid-season African Cup of Nations last year, and he was pretty rubbish for the last few months of the season. Whether that break in his seasons come at the wrong time,
Maybe.
maybe I'll float this out to you, Natalie. Is it a case of he went there, they had such an incredible run with Morocco. It's such a high, and then to come back, it's almost like, wow, how do I go? How do I go again now? And he's only a young
Maybe.
player. Now,
Yeah.
one thing that we probably need to raise is he has had like Ramadan over the last month, which
Yes. Correct.
must be incredibly rough trying to play during that. So I don't think we could be overly critical because I have no idea how that must feel as a footballer, let alone, professional footballer to do that. But it's something.
It's an incredible sacrifice, isn't it, George? That the
Yeah.
two Muslim players that we have in our squad who were, they participated in Ramadan. They were they were very clear that they wanted to maintain their faith and the fasting that they do, that Muslim community do each Ramadan. But to then maintain a level of fitness and athleticism that's needed for a high level sports participation must just be incredible. And the respect that I have for those players who did play through Ramadan is incredible. So yeah, I think you've probably summarised where I am with Zaroury. I think it's a case of we come to expect too much from footballers because we see them as idols and we see them as the key to the success that we all crave as fans, that has such a key part of our lives. These are young lads in their early 20s. And I know what I was like when I was in my early 20s. I was an idiot. And the expectation and pressure and limelight put on these guys is incredible. And Zaroury's gone in the space of this year. He's come to England for the first time. He's playing in a league he doesn't know. He's playing with a group of players who he's got to know this season, but didn't know at first. He's had that interrupted and been recalled. Don't forget, at the last minute, which was unexpected due to an injury, he wasn't preparing for a World Cup. He's then gone to meet his Moroccan teammates for the first time, playing a World Cup, where they then got to the semi-finals, which was incredible. And he's had to play, and he got to play in that third, fourth place playoff. He's then come back to the Clarets. He's then been pushed really, really hard for a relentless chase with Sheffield United for automatic promotion and the title. And then he's had Ramadan as well. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot on social media about what's going on with Anas, but I think we know why. It's potentially probably a small amount of burnout for the season. I think he needs a break and he needs to start again next year. So I completely agree with that, George. I think that's where we are. I think I think he's an incredible talent. And I think now that once the title's done, just let him breathe and let him get himself ready for next season. Last one for you then, George, before we bring a special guest in today. Looking forward and assuming that we get to keep the majority, if not all, of our loan players next season. Obviously, we don't yet know what the transfer window is going to hold. I think most of us are pretty clear that Jordan Bayer starts. He's a fantastic defender. We're a bit split at the moment between who plays alongside him. So I'm going to ask you to weigh in on the Taylor Harwood-Bellis versus Ekdal debate, please. Who gets your nod next season?
I would go with Hamar Ekdal. I think there are weak. I'll premise this with there are weaknesses to Ekdal's game, which I don't think have been picked up on massively so far. In that he's very slow, like he runs like an oil tanker. And so far this season, he's not been exploited for that much because teams haven't been peppering us with balls in behind, or when they have done, Bayer's been there to mop it up, or Muric has been in and around the area. But I do have concerns over how Ekdal can step up to the Premier League, just in terms of he is quite slow, and I just worry, a couple of strikers, say a Haaland or people like that getting in behind, that worries me, and that's something that Harwood-Bellis has over Ekdal. Now that being said, Harwood-Bellis has not been great in the last couple of games. He gives me very much Michael Keane energy. And by
Oh,
this
okay.
I mean he's quite skinny, quite sticky, and it just doesn't fill me with confidence sometimes in the security of the defence. I think him and Bayer are very similar footballers, and there just seems to be something about Ekdal when he plays. We look very assured.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know. I'm not really sure whether we're being really harsh here because Harwood-Bellis played the majority of the season. We were really good. We were all singing his praises, saying this man's going to be England captain in 2 years. And now, just because he's had 2 games since he's come back from injury and he's not been amazing, all of a sudden it's oh, Ekdal's better. It shouldn't be Harwood Bellis. So maybe we're just being harsh, but
We are
so
football
essentially,
fans do that
I'm just
though.
sitting on the
This is
fence.
what we do. This is what we do.
Yeah.
And actually, that is part of the beauty of being a football fan. It's the water cooler moment, isn't it? It's that idea that, especially this season when it's been just too darn easy, George. We need talking
Yeah.
points. We need things to spark our imagination. Well, the last talking point, we are going to hand over to a very special guest of ours, friend of the show, Mike Landers, who many of you know from previous podcasts has done with us. We asked him to debate the somewhat dramatic return of the play acting to Football League, and it's very much expanded from the Premier League down to the Championship. Gamesmanship, downright cheating or downright playmaking. However you want to describe it, it is here in our game and it looks like it's here to stay. Yesterday's example by the QPR players was one of the most extreme that we have seen at Turf Moor for a long time. I have no problem, to be clear, with managing the game well. I think there is game management that is done, and goodness me, Burnley in the Premier League wrote the instruction manual on that, how to take the sting out of the game. But when that has been exploited to just players falling down and just sitting down on the bench, 2 or 3 of them at a time, blatantly kicking the ball away when you're trying to take a free kick, QPR took it to the extremes. So we spoke to Mike and we got a little bit of a snippet from his current and new vlog as to what he made of that QPR performance.
Hi, this is Mike, and I thought I'd get in touch with No Nay Never Pod this week to offer my thoughts on an aspect of the game yesterday that was obviously causing massive frustration in the stands during and after the game, where people were beginning to get frustrated and start yelling at the officials, particularly the referee, and they were blaming him for failing to control the game. And I just wanted to sort of do a short piece because you're yelling at the wrong guy. Everyone who is upset with the officiating yesterday is yelling at the wrong person. And that is a deliberately designed thing, in that we can get annoyed at the officiating because of the way that QPR were time wasting. But ultimately, that is by design. The time wasting that QPR did yesterday is a symptom of a set of tactics that have been deliberately designed to be completely uncontrollable. So I'm going to explain why that is. And I'm going to start off, when you're familiar with the standard time wasting tactics, the long free kick, the staying down after a foul, the taking it into a corner, and so on and so forth. Lots of clubs do that. Every club does that. Nobody's an angel. There are variations on it. Some clubs do it more than others, and that's okay. We're not talking about that kind of thing. What happened yesterday was something that was more cynical and more deliberately designed to spoil a game of football, not just as a sporting event, but also as an entertainment event. And I'm going to start off with an analogy, and bear with me on this, but there is an analogy. If you imagine a politician who is doing favours for a business, and he gets caught, then he's going to resign. If that politician is caught having an affair, then they are forced to resign. If that politician has children outside of their marriage, they are forced to resign. But what if there was a politician who was so brazenly corrupt that he was doing favours for 10, 20 businesses at once, and at the same time he was having 2 marital affairs, which had borne 3 children out of wedlock? That politician will stay in position, and he'll stay in position because there is so much misconduct going on that the authorities are overwhelmed and cannot complete one particular action before being smothered by 3 or 4 more. Now, you may be wondering, what's the heck's that got to do with football? If you analyse the way that Gareth Ainsworth prepares his players to time waste and the tactics that they use, it is deliberately designed to confuse and overwhelm the referee. You will notice that the way that the players are wasting time is very different to your standard staying down after a foul or something like that. he instructs his players to rotationally time waste. So, for instance, a player goes down for 20 seconds and the referee is dealing with that. But then another player on another part of the pitch will go down for 20 seconds. And then one of the players will come over and start discussing a decision. Now, they don't have to discuss it in an argumentative way. They can just go, ref, why did you give that free kick? And the ref will turn around and go, oh, because of this, that, and the other. And that player will go, oh, okay, no worries, and walk off. Or he may decide to argue. But this is designed to confuse and overwhelm the referee. And this carries on and on and on. It's not just one incident. The idea is that there is currently 3 or 4 things going on at once that the referee has to keep track of, not least the actual game. You'll notice that the trainer never actually came onto the pitch to treat any of these players for their injuries, and that is deliberate, because the idea is to confuse and overwhelm and delay. And if the trainer comes on to treat a player, then they're going to be on the pitch for a minute or so, and there is a focal point. There is something for the referee to concentrate on. So the trainer is never prepared to come onto the pitch. You'll notice he stayed in the dugout all the time. And that has a secondary effect. That is aimed at riling up the fans and the opposition players and managers, because they're saying, if this guy's really injured, then surely the trainer should be coming on the pitch. What are you doing about it, ref? And suddenly the ref is, again, he's got an extra thing to get involved in, an extra thing. If the manager at the side of the pitch, the opposition manager is yelling, you know, he's confused and overwhelmed. And then fans get annoyed. So now the referee has 20,000 people on his back. This is all systemic and designed. And it's a thing that Gareth Ainsworth has done for his entire managerial career of 12 years. Wycombe were notorious for this. Why doesn't the referee take charge more? Why don't they apply the rule book? And it's a simple reason. The reason is simple, and it's totally counterintuitive, but it is the truth. If the referee applied the rule book, he'll lose his job. Consider a corner, any corner in a match. If the corner is taken, the ball comes in, I guarantee you that the defence will commit at least 3 different offences that should result in a penalty. I guarantee that happens every single time. But I also guarantee that the attacking team will commit at least 3 different offences that should result in a free kick. So what can the ref do? He is overwhelmed. He can't make a decision. So all he can do is try and see if anything especially outrageous or egregious happens. And if not, no harm, no foul, literally. If the ref did blow his whistle at every corner, every single corner, and punish one of the teams, he will be accused by the manager and by the media of ruining the flow of the game, and he will be hauled up in front of his superiors at the FA to answer questions about his performance, even though he is applying the rule book as it is written. Because of the number of fouls being committed by everybody, he's overwhelmed, and everybody gets away with it. Now, the rulebook also states that a referee should stop play for head injury. It doesn't say the referee should decide whether the player has suffered a head injury. If a player goes down clutching his head, the ref has to stop play. He's got a split second to decide that that looks like a potential head injury. And because he cannot afford for it not to be an actual proper head injury, he's going to err on the side of caution, because if he ever gets that wrong, that's it. That's his career. But the rulebook does not cater for a manager being cynical enough to deliberately game the system and tell his players to fake head injuries. The referee is placed in an impossible situation deliberately, and the fans get annoyed, the opposition gets annoyed, so on and so forth. The tension rises and everything boils over, and the referee gets overwhelmed. Time wasting. We noticed it yesterday. There is a rule in the rule book that says if a player kicks the ball away after a free kick or after a whistle, it's a yellow card. But there isn't a rule that says, okay, the player has picked the ball up with his feet and he's just juggling it and he's taking it 20 yards away and he's not doing anything. He's time wasting, but there isn't a rule against that. It's a deliberate tactic that he's been instructed to do by his manager to waste time. And if the ref decides that the ball is 20 yards further up the pitch, and the free kick is okay to be taken from that position, then that's actually against the rules. It has to be where the offence was taken. And the ref will actually have that noted down by his supervisor in the match report that the referee made a mistake. So again, the referee is deliberately and cynically placed in an impossible situation. So what can the ref do about this? And the answer is nothing, absolutely nothing, because they are trapped between a rock and a hard place. You could book the player for time wasting. You could book every player for time wasting. But again, this is about overwhelming somebody. If QPR had every player booked who was time wasting yesterday, they would have, say, 6 or 7 players on yellows. There is a long-standing rule that if a team has more than, I think it's 5 yellow cards in a game, then the FA will open an investigation into their discipline. Now, that rule was brought in when players were getting yellow cards for fouling the opposition. It's a lack of discipline. It was not brought in for time wasting. And if there was a charge brought for 6 yellow cards, then the answer to the charge would simply be, what did we do wrong? We didn't kick anybody. We didn't do anything. It was just, the man had an injury. The player had an injury. The player wanted to take a goal kick. It's an overly officious referee. And how effective is it? I'll go to time wasting. QPR only did this when they were ahead. The referee added on 8 minutes of injury time. The QPR were only ahead for 23 minutes of the game. 8 minutes in 23. You extrapolate that across a match, that's half an hour. Again, if the referee puts on the injury time that is supposed to be there has been wasted, he'll be putting on 15, 20 minutes in the second half. And people are going to go, what the hell are you playing at? Especially his superiors are going to, why are you giving 20 minutes injury time there? So what's the solution? There isn't one. There isn't one. What is happening is you've got a manager there who has built a career on not just pushing the boundaries of what is acceptable in terms of sportsmanship, gamesmanship, cynicism, shithousery, whatever you want to call it, but is determinedly and deliberately bringing the game into a farce, reducing the game to a farce in order to gain the advantage for his team. And people can say this is, sour grapes and all that kind of thing, and QPR deserved the win and so on and so forth. On a footballing level, when QPR played football, they certainly deserved at very least a draw, and, I can entertain an argument for a win. This is about the deliberate cynicism in ruining football as a spectacle. And I'm not sure what you can do about that, because at the moment this is being done under the radar. Ainsworth has done this for the best part of 12 years. And I suppose one of the good things is that other managers have not looked at it and copied it. Because if this was to get more widespread, if players were faking head injuries, if we had this multiple overwhelming situation where the referee is deliberately and systematically distracted and confused, then the authorities would probably start to take note. Because the one thing you never do to a person in authority is make them look stupid. And this is making them look stupid. It's actually putting the blame on the referee who is in a situation he cannot win and then sneaking away laughing behind your mouth. So there is no solution, I'm afraid. We can only hope that football kind of decides to self-police itself. And if you think that it isn't, then I'll leave you with this. Gareth Ainsworth was in charge of Wycombe for 12 seasons. He took a very small club in a place that had not a history of, huge football fandom and success. He saved them from relegation out of League Two. He got them to the playoffs twice. He won it once, and he also got them promoted into the Championship. Now, doing that on a budget that is incredibly tiny in a place that is not a football hotbed, if a manager saves a team from relegation and gets 2 promotions and the playoffs, you would think that that manager would be in high demand. But no one wanted him. Other clubs just looked at him and said no. That's why. QPR have only got him because they are so desperate to avoid relegation. They made their deal with the devil. It'll probably succeed, but a year from now, 2 years from now, not only will opposition fans get annoyed with it, you'll see the attendances dropping because it stops the entertainment. It stops the fun for even the home fans, who will begin to feel that they're not getting their money's worth. And maybe that's punishment in itself.
And do make sure that you check out Mike Lander's YouTube channel. It's Out of My Tiny Mind, a Burnley FC vlog. You can find that on YouTube. We'll put the link down in the show notes at the bottom for the full vlog of Mike's and to follow his other material. He's a friend of the show, and he does put out, he tackles the subjects that we're all thinking, but most of us don't have the emotional capacity to tackle. But Mike does it for us, so do check him out. George, that's all we've got time for. We've gone past QPR. Maybe just a quick summary from you of how you're feeling after just the third defeat this season and the first one at Turf Moor.
Deflated, because I've blown my inflatable championship trophy three times now, and sat with it for 90 minutes, and 3 times I've had to deflate it in the 89th minute. Feeling very sheepish because the championship title is not yet ours. So please, can we finally do it on Tuesday? Please, it's about time.
My most favourite ending to a No One Ever podcast we have ever done. Please, Clarets, we implore you, get the title done so George doesn't need to blow up his inflatable trophy one more time. On that note, listeners, I am going to leave it there. Do keep a note out, please. Please do not forget to just subscribe and leave your comments in the sections below. You know how this YouTube thing works. You know subscriptions mean numbers, which means we can do more for you. So please do hit that subscribe button if you can. Share and leave your comments in the section. We will be back in a not so very long at all to give you the preview ahead of the East Lancs derby. So do stay tuned to our social media. I've been Natalie Bromley. This has been the No Nay Never football show. George has got me with his inflatable trophy. I've gone to pieces. This has been the No Nay Never football show and podcast. Until next time. The No One Ever podcast is brought to you in association with the TalkSport Fan Network. Natalie Bromley is the host and editor, and the show is produced by Matt Moss. Our resident statistician is Dave Roberts, and our FPL expert is Adam Dennett. The Analysis Show team is collectively Tom Whittaker, Richard Steele, George Poole, Charlotte Rigby, Adam Dennett, and Robbie Kopak. Our music is provided by George Gaskill, and our newsletter team is headed up by Jamie Smith. If you don't already, you can subscribe to our newsletter by visiting nonadenever.substack.com. Our thanks as ever go to our partners TalkSport. We are as ever proud to be part of the TalkSport Fan Network.